Here we are back again for another lecture. Wanted to mention a couple things. First, this fox is a felt fox my wife made, and this dog over here is one my dog made, and that little puppy dog right there looks exactly like, or well, close enough, to my dog, little sweet little Lucy. And although Sweet is 85 pounds, she's a little chubby. But so she'll be watching you the entire time in her felted state instead of her real state. In her real state, she is laying over here on the ground taking a nap, just like normal. I hope everything's going well for you. So what I've decided to do for the class here is to give you these two lectures and then have the test on these two things. The two lectures I've given you before will be for the final exam, but that got us going on our email. And these two will be for a test, and I'll give you that test next week. And I think that that will help us move in the right directions to get things done fast. And there's so much material in these two lectures that I think keeping that third test will still be good. I was thinking of only doing a final, but I think just doing the third test will be okay. So we'll have these two lectures, take notes on these, and then you'll take an online test for them, okay? I think that's it. So let me mosey right into sharing the screen so we can get going. So we're going to be talking about the media mix and all the different kinds of media that we can use when doing any kind of advertising that we want to do. All different kinds of media are available. So thought for the day, here's Jeremiah 7:25 through 27. Since the day that your fathers came forth out of the land of Egypt unto this day, I have sent even to you all my servants the prophets, daily rising up early and sending them. Yet they hearkened not unto me. That's the people of Israel. Didn't listen, nor incline their ears, but they hardened their neck, and they did worse than their fathers. Therefore, you will speak to them, Jeremiah, all these words, but they will not hearken to you. You shall call to them, but they will not answer you. One of the things that always, you'll forgive me, bothered me about this statement is the media that God chose to communicate with people flat didn't work. Sometimes God just had to slap them upside the head and send them in to Babylon and punish them through droughts and things like that to get their attention. And I think it's interesting, God will use different methods, and sometimes he's okay with it not working. But I think with our jobs, we want to do our best to use the right media to make sure that the message always gets across and always works. Let's pray. Father, we pray you'll help us understand the different kind of media that are out there and be effective at choosing which media will get the best results for what we want to do. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. So let's start off with Eastman Kodak. 3 years before Kodak came up with his first camera, he ran this ad, and it was one of the first ads in modern history that promoted a product. So it said, shortly there will be introduced a new sensitive film, which it is believed will prove an economical and a convenient substitute for glass dry plates for outdoor use. Now, that does not sound like that's much of an ad, but that was Kodak's start. And boy, did he take off. In fact, he put up the first neon sign. He put it in Trafalgar Square in England, and just saying Kodak. But notice some of the innovations he did. So this is the first camera he came up with, which was the Brownie. His slogan was, you press the button and we'll do the rest. First really good use of slogans. In 1887, he started using a girl she was a drawn image, the Kodak girl. And so here, notice they had a brownie club for brownie cameras. So for $1, you could process your film, and then you could join this brownie club to be part of the camera epidemic going around, right? So it's kind of like, okay, he had an ad here, and then this is kind of like one of the first social media things, right? And now it wasn't online social media, but he had a club where people got together for doing camera type things. So here's the Kodak girl. And as I mentioned, they had one of the first electronic signs of all time in Trafalgar Square in England. So here's another one of his Kodak camera advertisements. Notice you get 100 instantaneous pictures. Anybody can use it. No knowledge of photography necessary. The latest and best, I think that's outlet for amateurs. Send for a description and circulars. So put up the ad in 1888, see what happens. Kodak. And he's gone through all sorts of different kinds of cameras through the years. Good advertising. So let's talk about the media mix. So the media mix, you remember the marketing mix. The marketers like the term mix. The marketing mix, the 4 Ps, product, price, place, promotion. The marketing communications mix, which is how we use the different kinds of media that are out there, advertising, internet interactive marketing, direct marketing, or you remember. I think you tested on that, so I'm sure you remember. But here, the media mix is how we combine the different types of media in a integrated marketing communications format, to where through the different media, we communicate with the customers. So we're going to look at billboards and outdoor advertising, posters, signs, point of sale, POS, point of sale. We're going to look at TV, radio. We're going to look at interactive internet advertising. We're going to look at newspapers and magazines, and we already looked at direct mail. So out of home slogans and advertising. So here, clearly billboards. I love that one. This is a swinger ad. These, you might find it interesting, in Anderson, we used to have a lot of these as you drove down Main Street. So you'd drive down Main Street and you'd see this temporary sign put up like outside of a sub shop. But Anderson made it illegal to have these signs, and you could only have a sign temporarily for 1 month during a calendar year. And when they made that change about 6-7 years ago, we had about 10 or 15 restaurants that went out of business on Crimson Boulevard because they couldn't, when people, they were dependent on people driving by, seeing the sign, the special today is a sausage sandwich, and they, you know, they'd go in, and they couldn't do that anymore. So a lot of companies took a big hit and went bankrupt. Out of home. So it's a growing business. Since 2013, out of home advertising has grown for about 5% every year. And I'm sorry, I apologize. I updated all the different internet statistics and TV statistics, and I forgot to update this one. So I think, if I remember right, we're at about $8.5 billion in outdoor advertising in 2018. Okay? Billboards are about 60% of that revenue. There are several different kinds of billboard appliques that are put on. The first one is a one-sheet elastic tie down. So you notice here that they print this sheet of plastic on one of these big printers. And this is a 12 or 14 foot wide printer. And it prints this thing out, and it prints the entire thing in one section, and then you notice they put grommets, this little metal thing on the plastic for a hole, and then they put a rope around it, or a lot of times a bungee cord, and then they just pull it up and tighten it. And most of the billboards you see nowadays, that's what they are, is just that sheet that's put on there. Then there are also poster panels, and there are pre-pasted and there are applied. So these here, so it's like you pull off the back of it. That's the pre-pasted, just like you would do on a sticker. And then you smooth it out, just like these guys are doing on this sign. So that's this is a one panel, but sometimes they'll do several panels. So they might do one, if it was a big billboard like this, they put 1, 2, 3, or 4, depends on how big the billboard is, sections, okay? The other time is a pasted on, the other type. And what they do there is it's just a piece of paper, and you see this a lot in New York City and in big cities, Atlanta, to where they'll put some glue on the billboard, or on the sometimes a wall, or sometimes a piece of plywood. And so they put paste on there, and then they put the piece of paper on it and roll it up, right? And use a squeegee and wring it out so it's smooth. Then we have painted billboards that are created on site. Maybe as you've driven down toward Chattanooga, you've seen barns where it's painted and it says Sea Rock City, right? That's a pretty big one in the South. We also have electronic billboards and billboard extensions. So this puppy dog right here, the billboard here is put on just like this one, and then they cut plywood and nail it into, or screw it into the back of the billboard here. And so this is a billboard extension, so the puppy dog's head goes above that. So types, bulletins, right? So a bulletin is 14 foot high. That's this kind right here. That is 14 feet high. And it is 48 feet wide. So that is a big old billboard. 14 by 48. The second size bulletin or billboard is 10.5 high by 36 feet wide. These are large format displays, and they're usually used on highways and expressways and big roadways. Then we have posters. These are also billboards, but they're called posters. And often there are 30 sheet ones, 8 sheet ones, and premier panels. So we may have 8 different sections that we put up. And these are a medium size. So generally they're 10 feet high and 22 feet wide. And some of them are 5 foot wide by 11 feet wide. That's the general sizes there. And those are mostly used for local areas. So if you're going down smaller streets in Anderson, and you'll see one of these 10 foot by 22s, or sometimes you'll see the 5 by 11s. Okay? And so these posters, now we think of them as, we've always looked at them as billboards, but the trade will call them poster size. They have a local presence, and they generally target geographic areas. Okay? Then there are wallscapes. So a wallscape is a huge billboard, over 700 square feet. So it can be up and down a building. In fact, nowadays, most big buildings are actually built with a plan to put a wallscape on there. So just like the plastic, the Nylar plastic that we print on those widescreen printers, we do that for wallscapes for many of them. And for some of them, we may have a good grief, a 50-foot wide, and occasionally they have 100-foot wide printers. And so they run the nylon through there and they print out this big poster, which is going to be a billboard, which is actually going to be a wallscape. And they put it up on the apartment building or on the business. So if you go to Japan, if you go to China, you're going to see these all over the place. And nowadays, New York is doing a tremendous amount of building their buildings with these in mind, so that the building, you get revenue from what's going on inside the building, and then you also get revenue from the advertisement that's outside the building. A lot of times nowadays, they're also using these wallscapes for when they're doing renovations on the outside of buildings. So they'll put the scaffolding up, and instead of putting a net in between the scaffolds so that something doesn't fall out and hit somebody, they will put these wallscapes up there. So it will be the entire side of the building where we have the scaffolding. Finally, we have digital billboards. All right, so this is the digital. Now, the first one, I will tell you, the first one I ever saw in Atlanta was going down 85. And you'd go down there and they had CNN live on the screen. And then they would, whatever the CNN people were saying, they'd have the text down there, the closed caption. And there were so many wrecks because people would be watching the news while they're driving and crash. And they had so many crashes at that intersection that the city ordered them to stop doing live feeds. So digital billboards have several different sizes. There's 14 by 48, really big ones that are done on interstates. They're 10 foot 5 inch by 36 wide. And they also nowadays is a 10.5 by 31 foot wide. So like if you go down Clemson Boulevard and you come to where Chick-fil-A is, right across the street, there's that big billboard, digital billboard. And that is a 10.5 by 36. Advantages and disadvantages of billboards. This is important for you to know for the test. The advantages are just high impact. I mean, this is that giantism hits us. It's larger than life. The billboards are very good in telling somebody where to find something. So one time my students in this class did a big billboard for the Sweetery, and there's a billboard right outside the Sweetery, and so we designed it for it to go right there, and so it had a sandwich and had the toothpicks pointing like this, and the sandwich was angled, the plate was angled, everything was angled over this way, so when you look at the billboard, it drives you to look down, and that's where the Sweetery was. It was just perfect. They're good as a reinforcer. So when we do a TV commercial and people pass by a billboard, it reinforces the message that was there. This is why billboards are used a lot for things like Coca-Cola and McDonald's, because they remind people, it's time to eat, I'm hungry, let me pull off the road. Often billboards are very cheap a medium, and especially for local ads, cheap in terms of the cost per view, which we're going to get into explain later on how we calculate that. And they have a long life. When you get a billboard, they're up for a month. Unless somebody doesn't book it for the next month. And if they don't book it for the next month, they don't take yours down. They just leave it up for an extra month. You get an extra free month. Not bad. Disadvantages. People are often distracted when they're driving or walking around. And so they may be focusing on other things and they don't really get the message that a billboard provides. And it's a passive medium, so it can be missed. A lot of people think signs like this are visual pollution. So you'll find a lot of poles nowadays are designed to where they look like trees or something of that nature. We have one as you go down Greenville Street or go up Greenville Street toward 85. There's one over on the right-hand side, and it's looks like an oak tree. So it tries to help that visual pollution. Costs. Billboard costs are measured by what we call showings. So the first thing they do is they get the traffic flow count from the state government or the county government, whichever it may be. So they do traffic studies. How many people pass by here? Last year, outside of AU, where we have the crosswalk, right before the crosswalk and right after the crosswalk, they had these little rubber things that you would run over, and when you ran over it, it did a pressure thing, and it counted the amount of people who went past on Boulevard Avenue. And that does a traffic study, right? Traffic count. So the term showing, so if we have 100 showing or 100 show, depends, different people will call it different things, but 100 showing, that means that 100% of the population will see that billboard or that group of billboards daily, and that means 5 times a week. So for example, a 75 showing with 3 billboards means that 75% of the population of the area will see it 5 times a week, daily, 5 times a week, not 7, 5. And that's important to know. They see it 5, everybody sees it 5 times a week because they're traveling for work. In Anderson, 6 strategically placed billboards around Anderson in different roadways will get the entirety of Anderson County 5 days a week, because people who work in Iva will travel down there. Maybe they live in Iva and work in Greenville, or you work in Townville and you go up to Pendleton. But anyway, they have identified 6 billboards, and if you're on all 6 of these billboards with the same message, then it's seen by 100% of Anderson County 5 times a day. Now, that's adults, of course. So a few facts. This is really key. The average billboard is viewed for 7 seconds. You have 7 seconds to communicate your message. That means that you only get 8 to 10 words in the entirety of the billboard. And if there are more than 8 to 10 words, then it's going to take 2 viewings for people to read the whole thing. So if you do that, you need to bifurcate the billboard, just as we talked about in an ad where we block off a section. So you read this section this time and this section the next time. Even so, it's very difficult because a lot of people, when they come back to that billboard, read the first 10 words again, and then you're out of time. So with 7 seconds and 8 to 10 words, that's good to point out a location, a slogan, or a benefit and get it out really quick. So now when we say 8 to 10 words, that's for everything. That's including the name of the product, the company, the address, whatever it is, 8 to 10 words. And once those 7 seconds are gone, it's over, right? So I think I mentioned here, and I think I accidentally said 10.5 by 30 for digital, and I meant 10.5 by 30 and 10.5 by, that should be 36, my bad there. 10.5 by 36. We got 12 by 24s and 5 by 11s. I'm going to skip that and show you some building. These are some very interesting wallscapes. So here, you notice in this one down here, you notice we've built it with these holes in the billboard plastic. And that enables people inside the building to look out and see out. So even in this white space over here where this person's face is, and the black part of her hair, the people inside can still look out because they still have holes, because all the holes in there. But when you're far away, you can't see these tiny little holes. So it looks like a full picture. So this is a wallscape, basically based on a full piece of plastic being put over that whole building. So here, notice the wallscape right here. So we've got a blank space in the building. So we use that and we put a wallscape here, right? And this one, of course, is very unique with the straws, right? I just love it. Right here, this is a billboard extension. So literally the building comes to a square here, but they take the billboard material and make it look like that it's broken up here. And some of it is done with a billboard extension. And then of course, all this is a billboard extension. I mean, you can really tell because it's not circular here. It's got a kind of oblong. This is a little flat right there. So here you notice we're building these buildings so that we're setting up for wallscapes. And they build this apartment building, and this right here, of course, is prime real estate for a apartment complex because people want a balcony right there. But instead of putting a balcony out there, they made it flat so that they can sell advertising at the building. And then these guys got creative with the spilled paint, and I just think that's a beautiful wallscape, right? So notice this is a building, right? And we put the wallscape on it. Here's an old wallscape painted on with 7-Up, right? Notice how this building is, they built it for wallscape here, this whole section here, and then another section here. And these guys got creative, and where you have the apartment windows, they just filled it in. But you can see how they built this for a wallscape to go here and to go here, and a little one to go here, and these guys just got creative and took over the whole thing. Again, you notice the wallscapes here on these buildings. Again, here, unique, right? How cool is this? So the quitplan.com, and we figure out it's a cigarette from this down here. What are we quitting? Well, then you catch down here, and it's like, oh, that's really cool. So now let's look at expand from our billboards to outdoor advertising, because there are lots of different kinds of outdoor advertising besides besides just billboards. So some of the characteristics are it can reach a variety of audiences very quickly. It has the potential for a high frequency of impressions, and it's flexible because we can change it a lot. Often it's a low cost per exposure, especially when we're talking about doing it in big cities. And it has impact because we can have size and shape and lighting. Sometimes we put motion in there and special impressions. So outdoor advertising can catch our attention when we're not necessarily looking for it. And often that's very effective. So here, for example, is the blimp. Now this is outdoor advertising. You've probably seen Shamu, which is for the aquarium down in Florida, and Shamu flies past Anderson quite often, and so does the Goodyear blimp, because they have a station for the Goodyear blimp and a station for Shamu in Atlanta, docking station for them to land. And so they fly past Anderson good bit. Right? This is the Samuel blimp. So let's talk about paying for outdoor impressions, right? So, I should say CPM is not just used for outdoor advertising. CPM is also used for internet advertising and all sorts of different kinds of media. In fact, it's probably the most centralized and well-used and universal measure of all the different kinds of advertising media that we could use. And I will say, I had a student who was here, I guess it's about 3 or 4 years ago, and she says, I just don't do math. And so when it came to the test, She didn't even answer the question to calculate CPM, right? I'm not going to do that. I'll never use that. And she goes and gets her first job, and she's calculating CPM every single day. And so she calls me up and she says, I had to go back to my notes to figure out how to actually calculate it. And fortunately, I did take good notes, even though I didn't bother to study it for the test. But tell the students, this is used by media all the time. And sure enough, it is. So CPM is cost per mil. Okay, so it's the cost per 1,000 impressions, okay, or views. So if I see something, I'm impressed with it, or I view it, okay? So CPM, cost per 1,000 views, is the total cost of the media that you're purchasing. So say the cost of a billboard, divided by the total number of views times 1,000. So just this formula right here would get us cost per view, but we multiply it by 1,000 so that we have a higher number, okay? And it equates better. And so CPM, standard for any kind of advertising business that's going out there. So is CPM-TM, which is the cost per 1,000 impressions for the target market, okay? So here we take the cost of the media buy divided by the total number of views of the target market. That's critical there. The total number of views of the target market times 1,000. Finally, we have cost per rating point. So this would be used in radio and in television, most of the time in radio. And that's CPRP, cost per rating point. And that's the amount you're going to pay to be on the radio, divided by the rating points that the program gets. So what they do when they, basically we're talking about market share. So if we have 100 radio stations out here, this radio station has 5% of the people who are listening to the radio during this hour listening to it, and a rating point is 1% of the total market. So if 5% of the total market is watching it, their rating point is 5. So it's the total dollars for the ad divided by what percentage of the population or percentage of the target market is listening, okay? So let me show you CPM on a spreadsheet. I need to do a new share, and I want to come up to this one. Right, so here we've got an example for CPM. So you remember our formula. Our CPM formula is the cost of media buy divided by the total number of views times 1,000. And our CPM-TM formula is the cost of the media buy divided by the number of views for the target market times 1,000, okay? So for example, Anderson, we got 150,000 people in the county, okay? But our target market is women, and women represent 51% of the market. We want 6 billboards to reach 100 showing. We reach everybody. So the cost per billboard is $1,500 a month. And it's going to show for 3 months, which we're going to assume is 12 weeks. So let's calculate that off, right? So here we've got $1,500 a billboard. And we have 6 billboards, and we pay that $1,500 once a month for 3 months. So we multiply that out, and it's $27,000 to get those 3 billboards, to get those 6 billboards for 3 months, okay? We have 150,000 people in the town, okay? And we're getting 100% show. And we have 12 weeks. So you remember that showing is everybody sees it 5 times a week, right? So they see it 5 times a week for 12 weeks, and there are 150,000 people who see it. So 150,000 people see it 5 times a week for 12 weeks. We got 9 million, let me put the comma there. We've got 9 million views, okay? And then we're going to divide those two and multiply by 1,000, and we get $3. Okay, now that's for 1,000 views. So that's about 3 cents a view, right? Because if we just move the decimal point. All right, now let's look at CPMTM. Here again, same thing, $1,500 billboard for 6 billboards, $1,500 a piece, and we're going to pay for them for 3 months. So we're still paying $27,000. But now we're going to look at the target market. So we have 150,000 people who are going to see it 5 days a week for 12 weeks, and 51% of them are women. So here, instead of 9 million, we're going to get 4.59 million views. So that takes my CPMTM to $5.88, or 5.88 cents per view. So that's how you're going to want to calculate CPM. Let me stop that share and let me go back to sharing my PowerPoint. So then there are premise signs. So you look at this, so there's a big Kmart sign. I think, how much does that Kmart sign cost? I'm betting you that sign right there would cost about $250,000. So you look at this little church sign over here. This baby probably cost $30,000. A church being $30,000, maybe 45, because you know this video thing up here. $30,000 for the sign. Yeah, when my church, our church was given their building by a church that was dying. So Capstone is down there, and it holds, I don't know, 350 people in the pews. And so it's about a $2.1 million facility, and they gave it to us with about $200,000 cash that they had. And then, so they gave it to us, and then their members started coming to our church. There were about 7 of them left. And so we took over that facility and then spent that $200,000 and another $2,000 to upgrade the facility to make the facility look good. And then they went to buy a sign. And they found out how much the signs were. And let's just say we put up a piece of plastic up there for about a year before we could come up and afford a sign. So all sorts of different kinds of signs. You know, sign for McDonald's. These are the kind of signs that I mentioned to you that Anderson outlawed, except you could only use them for a month a year in Anderson city limits. All right, then transit advertising media. I'm trying to get through the online. I'm trying to get this to 2 lectures instead of 3. Hopefully I'll be able to do that. So let's talk about transit. So we got station posters outside or on the station. Then you got posters on the platform. And then at the terminal, you have posters. You have cards that slide in these little slots. And you just take the slot and you slide your card in there to advertise. And then there are outside posters. So then there's transit advertising. Love this one, right? So the doors open. What a great looking bus that they've decorated out there. Here is a bus stop, right, in Brazil. Gotta love that one. You see this one here? I love this. Run with the Big Dogs for Sonic. They just paid the bus, and this is really a sticker It's a plastic sticker that they run, and then they peel the back of it off and they apply it. It's an applique. It's kind of cool. So here, one on the back of a bus. I just love this one. This is, of course, a normal bus, but this applique sticker goes on there, and it's painted so well that it looks like it's 3D. And I just think that is the greatest thing, right? So like this one, right? And how about this one? You're up in your office building, you look down and you see, don't jump, go send your resume to careerbuilder.com. Like this, the guy, I think this one's funny. He looks like he's smoking. Here on the outside and then on the inside, on the inside of this bus they decorated to make it look like it's eyes. Yeah, the door come apart and they look like they're kissing when they come together. How about this one? The door opens, and as the door opens, the guy eats the candy bar. Just love it. This one's from London, I believe. All right, so here's one. Saw this when I was in Greece. So had this in Athens and in Santorini, and I thought that's kind of cool. So indoor, now here we have a video TV monitor coming up there, and we're showing commercials the whole time because people are bored, and so they watch the commercials. And it's amazing how effective these things are, that people are so bored as they're sitting on the train that they read every single billboard every single time they're in it. Transit ads, okay? So when we think of outdoor advertising, radio is over here. And of course, the key thing for radio is the drive time. You want to get people on the radio when they're driving, because that's the biggest time people listen to the radio. But then we also have some radio going on in offices and in stores. And then we have billboards over here, you know, the bulletins, the spectacular displays, the wall murals, the vinyl wrap posters, outdoor advertising, street furniture, bus shelters, kiosks, convenience stores, and malls. Put posters in malls too. We can put them in stadiums. We can have airborne or on boats and college campuses, resorts, right, in the movie theaters. And then transit, you got buses and at airports and mobile stations, subways, truck sides, taxi, all sorts of stuff. Right? So pros and cons. The advantages of outdoor: wide local coverage. It's very good for local advertisers, good for national advertisers too, but it allows me, if I'm a small business, to just focus on my local area. High frequency of people seeing it. Geographic flexibility, I can put it, so the Sweetery, if they wanted to catch people when they're driving down Greenville Street, they put one on Greenville. If they want to tempt people who are over on the other side of the town, they can put it over there. You can be creative with outdoor advertising. It gets awareness for you. It's very efficient. It's often very good for sales. People, I should mention this, if we think back to our consumer behavior, in stage 2 of the buyer behavior process, it's the search function. And billboards are really, really, really good in the search phase. Not in problem identification, but I've already identified the problem. And then when I pass by the billboard, I'm already searching in my brain for solutions, and there it is. Right? And they're very easy to produce. Disadvantage, there's one other advantage over here, and that's timeliness. So I can put it up. If they have a billboard available, I can get it up tomorrow, right? If the billboard's available. The problem, of course, is that if they're already booked, then you can't. Some disadvantages: wasted coverage. So you're going to advertise, if you have a billboard that's for a automobile dealership, well, it's a wasted reach for people who just bought a car, right? You have a limited message capacity, right? We only get 7 seconds. Remember that, 7 seconds, which is 8 to 10 words. That's important to remember. It wears out quickly. Once you've seen it a couple times, you really don't want to see that billboard again. And they are high initial cost. And we get a lot of a low cost per view or a low CPM, but it still is a $1,500 billboard, right? And then we have those image problems with a lot of people in a lot of places not wanting to see billboards. So they pass local ordinances so you can't have them. A couple of extra things for transit advertising. We get exposure and we get frequency, because a lot of people who like take a subway or a train or a bus, they're riding it every single day. So we hit them over and over and over and over and over again. These are really good, for example, for vacation and travel. So if you go to Europe and you're going in the subway in Paris or someplace like that, you will see a huge number of billboards or posters in the subway that are talking about taking a trip. Because here you are, I'm in the subway again. This is so dreary. I want to get out of here. And here's this poster about a vacation to Santorini. Disadvantages are reach, so you don't reach people who don't take the transit system. And the mood of the audience. So I'm going to work on Monday morning. I'm not very happy. So I'm not paying attention. I come home Friday night, and all I'm thinking of is doing something else. So we do have an issue with mood. And let me see. I'm going to keep going. I'm just going to make this one longer. Okay.
He was caught at the crime scene. He was wearing the victim's shoes, and the DNA, a perfect match. Now, let's look at the defense. They say he didn't do it.
I dig the colors.
It's glossy.
You can't go wrong with glossy. It is glossy. It says he didn't do it.
Oh, it's simple message. Maybe it gets across. So let's look at newspapers. So we've got 1,530 daily newspapers in the United States and 8,000 weekly newspapers. Lots of newspapers. 30% of the dailies have a Sunday edition, and some of them will specialize to special target markets. So the newspaper carries news. So when people are reading the newspaper, they think news. And this is whether you're reading the newspaper online or whether you're reading the newspaper in a paper format. We're thinking news. And what that implies to the advertisements is that advertisements need to sound like announcements, like they're news, because people are looking for news, okay? So media buyers, here's my time to talk about media buyers. A media buyer is a person who goes and takes the ad that a company wants people to see, and they get it placed in media. So when I was at CenturyLink, we had 2.5 million customers who were in small towns in the United States. And we couldn't find an advertising agency that had any kind of specialty in all those small little towns. And so I had 3 people, full-time employees, who were media buyers. And they knew of all the different radio stations and all the different newspapers in all the towns that we served. And so we would take our CenturyLink advertisements for our mobile service or for whatever we were advertising. Usually it was mobile in those. And we would have our media buyer. We would develop the media. Sometimes we'd do it in-house, and sometimes we would do it with an advertising agency. And then our media buyers would get that placed in the local newspaper or in the local radio. Okay, and a media buyer gets it there. Now, in terms of, I should say, they also do things like magazines, any kind of media. A media buyer actually gets it placed into that media. For newspapers, readership has been declining, but still a large proportion of the adult population still see a newspaper. Newspapers do allow a lot of target marketing because they are delivered in special areas, and we can target an ad we can target by zip code, we can target an ad by streets. So we can go, the newspaper has a record of all the expensive homes in Anderson, and we can say we want this insert to go to, in the newspaper, to go to all the expensive homes. Sure enough, they get it. Co-op advertising. Now this can be in magazine, in billboards, and in newspapers, but I saved it here for the newspaper. So a co-op ad is where the manufacturer pays for part of the ad and the local retailer pays for part of the ad. Generally, the manufacturer are going to make the ad and the local retailer buys the ad and places it. But sometimes what they'll do is the local person will make the ad, get approval from the manufacturer, and the manufacturer will pay for part of the ad. So for example, a few years back, my students in this class did billboards for Strickland Marine. And what they did was they had to follow the requirements of Honda and Chaparral and things like this. So I remember we had this one ad with this beautiful Chaparral boat and a Honda motor, and Honda had a certain size. It was a billboard, and they put it in there, and we had Honda Chaparral and something else in there. And Honda paid 50%, if I remember right, of the price of the ad, and Chaparral paid 75% of the ad. So when Strickland Marine put up those billboards, they actually made money because the other two corporations covered the expense of the ad plus a little bit because we're using both of them, right? So co-op advertising. There are 3 types of newspaper ads. The first is a classified. Okay? Now, a lot of people thought classified ads were going to go out when online business came up. So you go to Craigslist and you can say, I'm going to, I'm having a yard sale, or I want to sell my whatever it is. Newspaper also has classifieds. So that's a classified ad, just like Craigslist. It's a classified ad for an item or for a job, or the government will post that they've repossessed a house for not paying taxes and they're selling it. All those are classified ads, classified ad. The second type is a display ad. So a display ad you see in newspapers and magazines and in the internet. That's just like, taking a magazine ad and putting that on the internet, or taking that magazine and putting it in a newspaper. It displays. Okay, so we call that a display ad. And the display ad can be anywhere in the newspaper except on the editorial page, because the editorial page is not news, it's people's opinions, so they don't put ads on the editorial page. So it can be on the back of the last page of the newspaper, it can be on the front page of the newspaper, it can be anywhere in between. For people who don't care where it goes, some of you may have been involved in yearbook when you were in high school, where you place things in the page and where everything's going to be, and you designed it all out. That's done with newspapers every single day. And if you did that for your yearbook, you remember sometimes there's a space right here. So then you go looking for a picture to fill that space. So in the newspapers, that's called run of paper rate. So if you say, here's my ad, and you generally pay by the inches. Here's my ad with this many inches in length and width. And if you could put that anywhere you want to put in the newspaper, and if you just let them choose, it's run of the paper rate, that's the cheapest rate. But if you tell them I want it on the second page, or I want the back page, or they're going to charge more. The third type of ad is a freestanding insert. These are things in the Sunday paper where coupons come and different advertisements comes. That is called a freestanding freestanding insert. Now, I should mention, I think I mentioned to you in class once before, but I want to re-mention how that's done. So what happens is they print the newspaper, and I told you it goes through the paper goes through the newspaper 3 times. And then so we've got the newspaper cut, and it's coming down, and it goes down, and there's blower comes in, and it blows air, it separates the paper, the newspaper, and then it blows the freestanding inserts in. Blows those things in. So they're inserted. And the reason people use FSIs is because the quality is so much better, because it's a better print methodology than the newspaper that's running that big ream of paper through 3 times through the printer. Also, those FSIs, they drop out, they command more attention. And they can be inserted in detailed locations. I can say, I only want this insert to go on this block, and they'll get it. It looks like I didn't update this one either. $48 billion spent in ads in 2004. That's down, I think it's about 38 billion now in 2018. Sorry, I didn't put that up there. Bad for me. Advantages of the newspaper. Range of market. So first is coverage. You can reach a national audience through having an ad in all the newspapers around the country, or you can reach specific groups. Maybe you remember, if you ever watched the Mel Gibson movie about, I think it's Conspiracy Theory. Great movie if you haven't seen that, one of the best. He publishes this little newspaper that goes out every month, and he's only got 15 subscribers, right? But it's a specialty newspaper that he does, right? So there are special interest groups. There's comparison shopping. A newspaper, it's news, it's information. So it's very good to have comparison advertisements. Generally, newspapers are held as more credible sources. So if you read it in the newspaper, whether it's usatoday.com or whether it's USA Today in print, you believe that a lot more than you do television or something else on the internet, something that came through your Facebook ad. You generally don't question the newspaper. It's credible. So if you want to seem authoritative and factual, then your ad goes well in the newspaper. It's flexible because you can choose which place you want to advertise in, which area you want to market in. You can have full color, different sizes. You can have FSIs. You remember an FSI up here is a freestanding insert. And you can put in samples in the newspaper. It's an integrated, it allows you to do integrated campaigns. So you have a TV ad, and then you have a companion piece that comes out in direct mail, and a companion piece that comes out in the newspaper. Disadvantages are short lifespan. People read the newspaper quickly, and basically it has a 24-hour lifespan, and it's gone. Clutter is a problem. They're trying to sell as many ads as they want, so there's so many ads, people may get tired of the ad and they may not be looking at the ads. Except generally in the Sunday paper, those freestanding inserts, oftentimes there are twice as many papers sold on Sunday than any other day, and people want to buy the newspaper for the coupons on Sunday. There's a limited number of coverage for certain groups. Guess which is the biggest group that's underrepresented? Yes, that's you. I know you guys don't read newspapers, right? Not very much. You get your information other places, right? And finally, we've got poor reproduction quality. A magazine has a lot better quality, which is again why we use FSIs. And here's some average circulation for top newspapers. I didn't update this either. These are down about 10%. So but you will notice that the #1 newspaper in the United States is the Wall Street Journal. And I will note that the average reader of the Wall Street Journal makes $145,000 a year. That might want to tell you something. Business people read the Wall Street Journal. New York Times, USA Today is the next biggest, and the LA Times, you can see the different ones down there. Biggest advertisers, department stores, and then Verizon and AT&T. Okay, And then, of course, we have advertising on websites. So this right down here, this LL Bean Visa Everywhere ad, that is a display ad. So they pay, in this case, it's probably display and a click-through ad. So they're going to play a display rate, and then if you click on it, they're going to pay another rate. The advertiser is. Okay, here's the Anderson Independent Mail. Right. Go to the Independent Mail, and we've got these display ads going on. If you clicked on seeing the one of these ads, it would take you to an interstitial right here, which means you have to read this ad before you actually get to see the content. And I'm going to stop here, and we'll start with magazines in my next lecture. Hope you guys are doing great, and hope that was, I tried to do that as fast as I could. I know it was long, but I tried. I'll talk to you